Hey everyone, it's Cassie, Lou, and Big Ant getting you ready for Monday Night Football. Bears and Vikings. The Bears are on this 7-game skid right now, but the Vikings are legit contenders. They're second in the NFC North at 11-2. Want to be taken more seriously, but I think you look at this Bears team and you're kind of trying to compartmentalize how this season is going. 3 weeks ago, they took this Vikings team to overtime. This is their second time around against the NFC North. So Lou, what do you want to see on Monday night?
Remember how they got to overtime. It was miraculous with the way the rookie played, the quarterback, Caleb Williams, and then the onside kick went in their favor, and you thought, man, we got him into OT, and then somehow the defense just broke down, especially in the secondary. I want to see this offense run the football. It's something that we did not see to start the game against the Niners, and immediately, Big A, they were playing from behind against that San Francisco defense, and Caleb Williams never had a chance.
It's one of those things that usually has to work hand in hand pretty well. When you have an opportunity to run the football successfully, it can set your team up to be ahead of the chains. It can set your defense up to rest when they get on the field. When you don't run the football well and then your defense goes on the field and gives up early touchdowns, the entire game plan, the formula that you're hoping to attack with is now thrown on its head because you're playing catch-up. That's one of those things, even in games where the Bears weren't starting fast on offense early in the season, the defense, especially in the red zone, was able to stymie opponents. That hasn't been the case lately. It certainly wasn't against San Francisco, and this is a hot Vikings offense right now.
And you got to worry about that Vikings defense, one of the best in football. They may blitz, even though they backed off because Caleb Williams picked it apart 9 of 11 for a $151 in that first meeting when they blitzed. But he's got to avoid the sack. And how do you avoid the sack? You run the football. He's been sacked a franchise high 56 times right now. On pace, I think, for 73 sacks. There's been 2 quarterbacks in the history of the game that have been sacked more. Derek Carr, one of them, and he was never the quarterback that everyone thought he was going to be. My worry is because they throw the football so much, and I don't know if you guys saw this. It was an alarming stat. The Bears are on pace to throw the football more this season than in any season in the history of the franchise. That's not the right way to break in a rookie quarterback, is it?
No, it is not. And, you know, we're having these conversations a bit coming into the year, and it certainly continued during the season as well. Just the idea for how the Bears, with their talented young quarterback and a lot of the weaponry that's been assembled by Ryan Poles, how does this offense best attack opponents? They certainly wanted DeAndre Swift to be a big part of this offense, but his rushing numbers have diminished as of late. He's been banged up throughout this particular week, but then moving forward, especially down the stretch here, to take pressure off that offensive line, which honestly performed really well the last time, just a few weeks ago, that we saw them face the Vikings here. 3 sacks in the game, but you could certainly make the case several of those sacks were actually on Caleb. So I do want to see a version of Caleb Williams, of this Bears offense, that comes out with a level of aggression in some of those passing downs. As much balance to the play calling as possible. But one of the things we've seen is in the second halves and in fourth quarters, Caleb does kind of put that cape on and does some special things. I'd like to see them get out of this habit of starting slow and maybe schematically calling into some aggression early is a way to do that.
Some first quarter points would be nice. Let's talk about this Bears defense because they held Justin Jefferson to just 2 catches and 27 yards in that first meeting. But you had mentioned Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. They're not a big deal. And then they went off in that game.
Thanks, Lou.
And then we saw George Kittle go off for more than 100 receiving yards. So what does this Bears defense need to do to limit what can be a high-powered Vikings offense and Sam Darnold, who's coming off his best game?
Sam Darnold threw 5 touchdown passes last week. That worries the heck out of me because I haven't given this guy respect all year long. You have. You saw him in high school. You saw him at USC. You knew he was capable of this type of play. I hadn't seen it on the NFL level. I'll tell you what, it shows what Kevin O'Connell can do with a quarterback in Minnesota. It also shows what happens when you're the quarterback and you have a defense that you can depend on like they do in Minnesota.
Situation matters so much for quarterbacks, and we've been starved for consistency at QB in this city for so long that it gets discounted. How much the coaching matters, how much the overall infrastructure of the development for that position matters. A bunch of franchises around the league have struggled trying to get that right, but Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell, he's been getting that right. We've seen Shanahan getting it right for a number of years. We've seen McVay getting it right with a variety of QBs. The way you handle the game, the way you manage the game, the way you set up your roster, that matters so much. And the comfort that a quarterback can play with, Minnesota's a great example of that. I do believe that where the Bears defense needs to attack the Vikings, they got to get more from that front seven. It's got to be about the D-line. Eric Washington tried to take the approach against San Francisco as the pass rush wasn't getting home early, called them into a bit more aggression, brought some blitz looks. Most of it was zone types of dogs where you bring additional rushers, drop some bodies into coverage. They just weren't getting home with it, and when they did, we saw Brock Purdy get the football out of his hands. So that D-line, getting them on the move and getting more effective with the stunts, with the way they can penetrate into the backfield, it's got to be a big key for the Bears. The four-man rush, just beating guys one-on-one, that hasn't been effective for anyone other than Montez Sweat, and he hasn't even been at the level we anticipated this season. But when you have a penetrator and those twist stunt opportunities, that first guy has to get into the backfield. It sets up playmaking opportunities for everyone else.
I want to talk about the quote of the week because Caleb Williams was asked how he handles going through a losing streak, and he said it's interesting, long pause, it's tough, and that he's never experienced a losing streak like this before in his playing career, and that he's asking questions to teammates in the locker room who have before. What are you watching from Caleb Williams as he goes through this, and how are you assessing how he's handling everything?
Continues to smile, continues to try to motivate his teammates, and the realistic numbers are he's lost 10 games in college over the course of 3 years. If the Bears lose against the Vikings, he will have lost 10 games in 3 months. This is quite an adjustment for a quarterback who has had nothing but success, albeit I know he struggled at the end of last season again for USC. But for the most part, throughout his high school career and his collegiate career, he has had nothing but success. This is new territory for Caleb Williams, and I still see him go to the lectern to talk to the media on Wednesdays, and he still respects the media. I don't see him with his head down. I don't see him disrespecting the media. I think he has handled it as well as any rookie I have seen.
And it feels like the Bears locker room as a whole, you've been there throughout the week, of course, Cass. It feels like maybe there's a bit more of an exhale, a bit more positivity perhaps than what we've seen in recent weeks here. What does that manifest itself into in game action? We'll have to wait and see how that plays out against the Vikings, but it does seem that they're a group right now that's looking for and trying to find perspective to see if that can infuse some additional positivity into the way they actually play.
And that's what Jalen Johnson was saying a couple weeks ago. We saw him stand at that podium very, I think you could say angry at the situation he was in. And then this week, seeing him kind of laughing and smiling, saying we're lucky that we get paid to play football at this level. They're human beings outside of the game as well. So they still have to go home, be husbands, fathers, etc. But Caleb Williams, to your point, both you guys, very level-headed, and you forget, I always mention this, you forget that this is a 23-year-old quarterback who has the weight of the franchise and in a lot of ways the city on his back, and you would never know. All right, it's always the same for Caleb Williams, a little bit different for us this week because the game is on Monday night, so you can catch Lou, Tina, and then Jason Leisure from the Chicago Sun-Times and Kevin Fishbane from The Athletic Sunday night on Chicago Sports Tonight, and then we have a special edition of Bears Game Day Live Monday starting at 5:30, so we'll see you then.